We have an update now to a story we were the first to bring you. Earlier this week, a GTA mother, Julia, shared a terrifying story about how an Uber vehicle drove off with her 5-year-old daughter inside. We're not using Julia's last name to protect her daughter's identity. When she tried contacting Uber, she was told that they couldn't contact the driver because of its policies. Well, today a motion was introduced at Toronto City Council calling on rideshare companies to change their emergency rules. Farrah Merali joins me live with more. And Farrah, a story that really resonated with many people and now spurring calls for change.
That's right. Julia described this, Kelda, as like a parent's worst nightmare. Imagine your kid in the back of a car with a total stranger with no way of contacting him. Just to recap what happened, Julia was coming home with her partner. They had 4 kids between them from a Raptors game. The plan when they got to where they were going was to get the 3 kids in the front area out. She was going to come back to get her 5-year-old who was sleeping in the farthest back row of the vehicle out after. But when she came back to get her, the car was gone. Now, really at the heart of this story was that the mother and her partner tried contacting Uber to get a hold of the driver, but they were told that that was against their policies, despite this being clearly an emergency. In fact, police told us they too weren't able to get that information from Uber. They managed to track down the driver through their own means and with no help from Uber around 90 minutes later. And thankfully, the young girl, the 5-year-old daughter, was unharmed. They say the driver had no idea she was even there sleeping. But really what Julia took aim at in speaking out is how Uber handled this situation. That call was picked up by Toronto City Councillor Mike Cole. The story clearly struck a chord with him. And today, he introduced a motion that's looking for rideshare companies to take greater accountability to directly help customers and police in emergency situations like this. Take a listen.
Whether it be taxis, whether they be the Uber, all these other private companies, we have rules they have to abide by. So we're going to ask them to basically alter the rules, or we may make changes to compel them to basically change the rules for emergency safety reasons.
Now, Cole says he's spoken with the city's legal and municipal licensing teams and that it does have the authority to make rules for any vehicle for hire companies. The review that he's calling for would sort of look at existing rules and recommend additional licensing requirements for companies like Uber, companies like Lyft, as well as their drivers. And Kelda, this afternoon, that motion did pass at City Council. So we know that they are going to be looking at this a little bit more closely.
And Farrah, I know that the mother at the center of the story, Julia, she was at City Hall today. What was her reaction to this development?
That's right. So, from the beginning, one of the things that Julia had mentioned to me is that the reason she was sharing her story was to prompt a change to Uber's policy. She's obviously looking for compensation, but said, there's no amount of money that will be enough if Uber really doesn't change the way it handles emergency situations like this. So she told us today inside the council chambers that she's pleased to see this motion.
See that there's actually some action being taken now on the political side of things gives me a lot of hope that not only is this being taken very seriously and it's being considered something quite urgent, but that perhaps we can really affect change here.
Now, Julia said to us today she's still awaiting some kind of response from Uber since all of this sort of broke, since our story broke. And I should say, Kelda, that when we did reach out to them last week, one of the things they told us is that they're going to be looking into this incident to see how it could maybe, how they could review their processes in terms of emergencies and such. So we'll wait to see if that changes in the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for this update, Farrah.
You're welcome.